Right now, almost two-thirds of Americans are overweight, and by 2030, more than half our population may be clinically obese. Childhood obesity has tripled, and most of them will grow up to be overweight as well. The United States may be in the midst of raising the first generation since our nation's founding that will have a shorter predicted lifespan than that of the previous generation. The food industry blames inactivity. We just need to move more. But what is the role of exercise in the treatment of obesity? There is considerable debate in the medical literature today about whether physical activity has any role whatsoever in the epidemic of obesity that's swept the globe since the 80s. The increase in calories per person is more than sufficient to explain the U.S. epidemic of obesity. In fact, if anything, the level of physical activity over the last few decades has actually gone up in both Europe and North America. This has important policy implications. Yes, we still need to exercise more, but the priorities for reversing the obesity epidemic should focus on the overconsumption of calories. To work off the increased caloric intake, which for kids is like an extra can of soda and small fries, compared to what they were eating back in the 70s, and for adults, like an extra Big Mac a day. To work that off, we'd have to walk like 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. So exercise can prevent weight gain, but the amount required to prevent weight gain may be closer to twice the current recommendations. Public health advocates have been experimenting with including this kind of information. The fast food menu labeled with calories and the number of miles to walk to burn those calories appeared to be most effective in influencing the selection of lower-calorie meals. Now, exercise alone may have a small effect, and that small effect can make a big difference on a population scale. A 1% decrease in BMI nationwide might prevent millions of cases of diabetes and heart disease, thousands of cases of cancer. But why don't we lose more weight from exercise? It may be because we're just not doing it enough. I mean, the small magnitude of weight loss observed from the majority of exercise interventions, where they make people exercise, may be primarily due to how low the doses are of the prescribed exercise. People tend to overestimate how many calories are burned by physical activity. For example, there's this myth that a bout of sexual activity burns a few hundred calories. So hey, you could get a side of fries with that. But if you actually hook people up and measure energy expenditure during the act, and your study subjects don't get too tangled up with all the wires and hoses, though it may be nearly the metabolic equivalent of calisthenics, given that the average bout of sexual activity only lasts about 6 minutes, a young man might expend approximately 21 calories during sexual intercourse. Of course, he would have spent roughly one-third that just lying around watching TV, just basal metabolism. So the incremental benefit is plausibly on the order of 14 calories. So maybe we could have like one fry with that.
That's the fourth one I've seen you take in the last 2 minutes.
Did you want to try one?
No.
I have pills for you too.
Ronda Rousey, athlete, phenom, trailblazer, a sex symbol, and an unstoppable force in the UFC. She brought women's MMA fighting to the forefront with top-billing fights all over the world. 12 professional wins and now 1 loss. I sit here today in Hollywood, in one of Ronda's homes, for her first exclusive interview since that night. Well, Ronda, I gotta say, you look great.
Thank you.
So, the question everybody has, what went through your mind that night?
Holly Holmes' foot.
Well, that couldn't be more true. People want to know, after a loss like that, what's next?
Well, I really want to focus on acting right now. I have a lot of offers coming my way, and acting is a lot better than getting knocked out. Oh.
Just getting comfortable, so let me just... I see you have a lot of medications here.
Got all sorts. This one's for pain. This one's also for pain. And this one's for depression and pain.
Well, it sounds like you're well taken care of.
I love these so much. I like to do 3 at once.
From what I'm reading, this could have some upside for you now that you have taken one loss. There are some new sponsors that want to get involved.
Yes, there's absolutely more. In fact, Peas. I'm going to be the new spokesperson for Peas because I love to put peas on my head. It really helps. And some pain medication products and makeup. I have this great idea for Maybelline. Okay, are you ready? This is what it's going to be. I think they're going to buy it. Okay. Maybe she deserved it. Or maybe it's Maybelline.
Is she? Are you sure she's good? Rhonda.
Always. Oh, I love these birds you have. It's so
No,
cute.
there's no bird. Okay, well, that pretty much concludes our interview here with the one and only Ronda Rousey, talented athlete, icon, and phenom. But it begs the question, was she really ever that tough, or is all of this just hype? Oh!
Was I not tough? Was I not tough? Yes, I was that tough! What are you, little bitch? You didn't fuck me! I'll show you!
Call 911. Someone call 911. She's an animal.
By our 70s, 1 in 5 of us will suffer from cognitive impairment, and within 5 years, half will progress to dementia, in a progression from cognitive impairment without dementia to dementia and death. The earlier we can slow or stop this process, the better. Although an effective treatment for Alzheimer's disease is unavailable, even interventions just to control risk factors could prevent millions of cases. So an immense effort has been spent on identifying risk factors for Alzheimer's and developing treatments to reduce them. In 1990, a small study of 22 Alzheimer's patients reported that they had high concentrations of something called homocysteine in their blood. The homocysteine story starts back in 1969, when a Harvard pathologist reported 2 cases of children, one dating back to 1933, whose brains had turned to mush. They both suffered from extremely rare genetic mutations that led to abnormally high levels of homocysteine in their bodies. So is it possible, he asked, that homocysteine could cause brain damage even in people without genetic defects? Well, now here we are in the 21st century, and homocysteine is considered a strong independent risk factor for the development of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Having a blood level over 14 may double our risk. In the Framingham study, they estimated that as many as 1 in 6 Alzheimer's cases may be attributable to this elevated homocysteine in the blood, now thought to play a role in brain damage, cognitive, and memory decline. Our body can detoxify homocysteine, though, using 3 vitamins: folate, vitamin B12, and vitamin B6. So why don't we put them to the test? No matter how many studies find an association between high homocysteine, cognitive decline, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease, a causal role, a cause and effect role, can only be confirmed by interventional studies. Now, initially, the results were disappointing. Vitamin supplementation did not seem to work. But the studies were tracking neuropsychological assessments, which are more subjective, compared to structural neuroimaging, actually seeing what's happening to the brain. And a double-blind, randomized, controlled trial found that homocysteine lowering by B vitamins can slow the rate of accelerated brain atrophy in people with mild cognitive impairment. As we age, our brain atrophies, slowly atrophies, but the shrinking is much accelerated in patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Kind of an intermittent rate of shrinkage is found in people with mild cognitive impairment, but so the thinking is maybe if we could slow down the rate of brain loss, we could slow down this conversion to Alzheimer's disease. So they tried giving people B vitamins for 2 years, and they found it markedly slowed the rate of brain shrinkage. The rate of atrophy in those with high homocysteine levels was cut in half. A simple, safe treatment can slow the accelerated rate of brain loss. A follow-up study went further by demonstrating that B vitamin treatment reduces by as much as 7-fold the brain atrophy in the region specifically vulnerable to Alzheimer's disease, to the disease process. Here's the amount of brain atrophy over 2 years in the placebo group. Here's the amount of loss in the B vitamin group. Less brain loss. Now, the beneficial effect of B vitamins was confined to those with high homocysteine, indicating a relative deficiency in one of those 3 vitamins. So wouldn't it be better to not get deficient in the first place? Most people get enough B12 and B6, but the reason these folks were stuck up at a homocysteine of 11 is that they probably weren't getting enough folate, which is found predominantly in beans and greens. 96% of Americans don't even make the minimum recommended amount of dark green leafy vegetables, the same pitiful number that don't eat the minimum recommendation for beans. In fact, if you put people on a healthy diet, on a plant-based diet, you can drop their homocysteine levels 20% in just 1 week, up from around 11 down to 9. The fact that they showed significant homocysteine lowering without any pills, without supplements, even at 1 week, suggests that multiple mechanisms may have been at work. They suggest it may be because of the fiber. Every gram of daily fiber consumption may increase folate levels in the blood nearly 2%, perhaps by boosting vitamin production in our colon by our friendly gut bacteria. It could also be from the decreased methionine intake. That's where homocysteine comes from. Homocysteine is a breakdown product of methionine, which comes mostly from animal protein. And so if you give someone bacon and eggs for breakfast, then a steak for dinner, you can get these spikes of homocysteine levels in the blood. Thus, decreased methionine intake on a plant-based diet may be another factor contributing to these lower, safer homocysteine levels. The irony, of course, is that those who eat plant-based diets long-term, not just at a health spa for a week, have terrible homocysteine levels. Meat eaters up at 11, but vegetarians and nearly 14 vegans at 16. Why? They're getting more fiber and folate, but they're not getting enough vitamin B12. Most vegans can be classified as being likely to suffer from hyperhomocysteinemia, too much homocysteine in the blood, because most vegans in this study were not supplementing with vitamin B12, or eating vitamin B12 fortified foods, which is critical for anyone eating a plant-based diet. But if you take vegans and give them B12, their homocysteine can drop down below 5. Why not just down to 11? Well, the reason the meat eaters were stuck up at 11 is probably because they weren't getting enough folate. But once vegans got enough B12, they could finally fully exploit the benefits of their plant-based diets and come out with the best levels of all.